Reese DeForest, that's my birth name. I'm the curator and artistic director of the Madam C.J. Walker Museum, an original Madam C.J. Walker beauty shop from the 1940s, as well as WERD Studio, first black-owned radio station in North America.
My full name is Harold Douglas Lamar, but I'm known professionally as Hal Lamar, and I am a retired print broadcast journalist.
My name is Tyrone Brooks Sr., and I am an active veteran of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, rewired from the Georgia House of Representatives, according to Reverend Gerald Early. He said, don't say retire, rewired. And I serve as chair of the Moores Forward Movement, which is an affiliate of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference.
I can recall when I was just a baby and my mother bringing me down here on Auburn Avenue to see a doctor by the name of P.Q. Yancey, who was in the Herndon building, which was located right at the corner of what was once Butler Street and is now Jesse Hill Drive and Auburn Avenue. Since then, I've been on Auburn for various and sundry things all of my youth and adult life, including being a Y boy down at the Butler Street YMCA, getting a soda and a hot dog at Yates and Milton drugstore, coming up to look inside the picture window of the Atlanta Daily World and seeing their typesetting machines. That might have inspired me to be a journalist, I don't know.
My name is Marion Alexis Scott. Not many people know that. I usually sign my name M. Alexis Scott because I was reared by the name of Alexis, and I am the retired publisher of the Atlanta Daily World, and I'm currently a commentator on the Georgia Gang on Fox 5 Atlanta, a Politics Week in Review show.
My grandmama would bring me from Warrenton to Atlanta, and I remember she would like to come down Auburn Avenue, and Auburn Avenue was totally different from what we see today. It was a bustling, busy place, just like Peachtree. I mean, just like Times Square in New York, it was busy, busy, busy. And we would stop at SCLC headquarters where she would always leave a contribution.
I didn't really seek out WERD. It just fell in my lap, and it fell in the lap of an individual who has the perspective of music, for me, is parallel to oxygen and plasma. And then when you dive into the stories of the artists that produced the music from the 1920s through the 1970s, their stories have elevated my sense of humility and appreciation for the art form, knowing what they went through, yet their batting average, Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Dexter Gordon, Lester Young, Louis Armstrong, Cab Calloway.
That has the fondest memory for me was being able to work at, all too briefly, but going to the studios of WERD Radio, where I like to credit with giving me the start of what became a near 50-year career.
And so I felt compelled to preserve this legacy, to keep the people who grew up with it, put them back in touch with it, because a lot of our seniors can't access the music, especially at senior facilities.
Black radio stations, WERD, that was right above SCLC on Auburn. Mr. B.B. Blayton, who founded it.
I don't understand the story because I know the space. SCLC is on the front of the Prince Hall Masonic building, and I've been inside, and I've looked at the ceiling.
He had WERD right above SCLC, and I saw the microphone that would come down from the ceiling right to Dr. King's desk.
And there was one story that they passed it down from the radio station to his office, but the ceiling is like 17 feet tall. And then I go outside, and it's even taller because the building is on a slant. So
the bottom of the roof was right over SCLC's office, and so that roof had a hole in it where a microphone would come down whenever Dr. King needed it. All he had to do was just pull it, and they would release it down, and Dr. King could speak live into that microphone. He would be recording or giving news items for broadcasts through WERD radio.
They may have, he could have easily just walked up the steps and went to the radio station. But it's a great story. I mean, I wasn't there, so I can't really validate that story. But it's definitely a folklore type of story, and it would be beautiful if that was the case. Just to drop a microphone and let Dr. King, coordinate some logistics or just pass a few words of wisdom to the listeners of WERD.
I was a sports editor for the Daily World back in the late 70s and the early 80s. And coming down here and working for that paper, at one point the only black-owned and operated daily newspaper in the United States. That's a big thrill, especially for a young sports writer like me, and being able to, at that time the world had gone, as evidence of a decline, the world had gone from a daily paper to a 4-day-a-week paper. But I was working here then as the sports editor for the 4-day-a-week paper. And I was just as thrilled as if I had been here in the 50s and 40s and rubbing shoulders with the likes of sports writers like Marion E. Jackson, who was one of my mentors in terms of writing and writing with a flair.
My earliest reflections of Auburn Avenue are coming down here as a child. My parents both worked at the newspaper, which then was located at 210 Auburn Avenue, where the Big Bethel's high-rise, that's where the original location of the paper. And I used to come down after school, go to Henry's Grill to get a split, which was right up the street, and just generally enjoy being a kid running through the newspaper, because you can make a lot of noise because of the printing presses, and it was a daily then for sure. You could go back and see the men working on the linotype machines. There are these huge typewriters that are not typewriters, but they do the hot metal, and they managed to make this magazine which goes on the printing press. We had a flatbed printing press, and the paper runs over that. So it's just the most amazing and fascinating thing to be around.
My name is Paul Williams. I am the proud owner of Sweet Auburn Seafood, located at 171 Auburn Avenue in Atlanta, Georgia.
Hi, my name is Kenley Waller. I own Kenley's Catering and Sandwich Shop at 75 Piedmont Northeast, Suite 152, Atlanta, Georgia.
It was a dream child of mine that I came up with in 2014. And after years of knowing about Auburn Avenue as a child, I watched the funeral procession of Martin Luther King come down Auburn Avenue on that black and white television, and I saw Auburn Avenue.
We're independent owned, it's just me and my wife, and that's what we do, and that's how we got into so far into this restaurant business. And we've been in it now here at Citizen Trust Bank for 19 years, and when Georgia State bought over, the first thing they said, "Will you stay?" And I said, okay, because everybody else they had put out, and they said, "Will you stay?" So the kids love your food, and so we've been here ever since.
I am co-owner, along with my lovely wife, Tanya Graham, of Big Mouth Ben Stores. We're located at 370 Auburn Avenue. We're a community store. We sell souvenirs and snacks and quick grab-to-go snacks, ice cream and things like that. And when I say we're a community store, we're there for everyone, especially those in need. We run a community voucher program for people that may not have money to come into the store and get stuff to eat. So we're able to provide vouchers for them. We assist those that are experiencing homelessness. We experience seniors that we help those seniors that may be in need, as well as mentor youth that are in school and they may be coming by the store to visit. And so we reward them for good grades in schools and things like that.
Auburn Avenue to me it's always had a tradition for blacks, and always had a tradition for good food. And I knew I could do that because I have been doing food ever since 1979 for corporations. And I would always had the top priority businesses.
It always motivated me to one day come down on Auburn Avenue and do some kind of business. My father-in-law, however, spent a lot of time down here on Auburn Avenue. He spoke of his social life and professional life and social life down here on Auburn Avenue. In fact, he was one of the first African-American DJs in Metro Atlanta, a man by the name of Ali Pat. And from him talking about Auburn Avenue even inspired me even more to be a part of this. Because he always said that when I die, just cremate me and spread my ashes on Auburn Avenue. And that stuck with me and even more, made me even want to be more and more a part of this.
I am Bernard Brana, President and CEO of Brana Brothers, and also publisher of Upscale Magazine. Auburn Avenue was definitely deeply rooted in the Brana Brothers legacy. Our first store was opened on Auburn Avenue. So as a kid, I was working with my father and family in the store on Auburn Avenue. Auburn Avenue was the New York City of the South.
Auburn Avenue, I love the tagline, A Street of Pride. It is a prideful neighborhood. It is a neighborhood. It's a community. I came here to be the wife of Maynard Jackson, who was a lawyer at that time. He was not the mayor. He had no concern for earning money. His desire was to serve his people.
My name is Henrietta Phillips Antonine. I came to Auburn Avenue in 1962 as a clerk for Atlanta Life Insurance Company. And God blessed me, I grew in the company to end up being a senior vice president of the company. I worked in the claims department, and from there I began to work in PR. And I worked closely with Jesse Hill, who was the president of the company, and was an activist in civil rights and just about everything to improve the lives of Black people. One of the things I enjoyed about Atlanta Life was it was founded by a former slave, Alonzo Franklin Herndon. And I used to boast that how many people can say that they worked for a company that was founded by a slave. And with that, we recognized who we were, what our market was. We went after Black people, we supported our people. And what I enjoyed most about my job was that I had an opportunity to open doors for Black businesses.
I'm Wellington Cox Howard, and I am the president and founder of Georgia Insurance Brokerage at 193 Auburn Avenue in Atlanta, Georgia, an institution that has been in existence since 1970. Janice Perkins and her husband came in and redid the Oddfellows building. The Oddfellows building was open. Yates and Milton had closed, and the street was just a total 100% decline. And all of a sudden it popped up, it became, a viable spot for people to come in and open up businesses because, it was practically rent-free. Of course, a lot of people say, well, why am I still down there? And I said, well, where else am I going? I'm not particularly concerned about going to Peachtree Street, and I think I'll stay here. Like my arms are crossed and I'm gonna stay.
I really appreciate what Janice Perkins is doing or has done with her building, her entrepreneurialism that made her buy that building, and her stick-to-itiveness that helps her stay there.
Well, the Oddfellows building was built in 1913 as an addition to the original Oddfellows building, built in 1912. These buildings were built by a group of Black businessmen who had raised $250,000. Now, in 1912, that was a feat. It would be a feat today to get a group together to raise money to build a structure.
Oh, my family in this drugstore. It goes back into the 1920s. The drugstore was owned by my grandfather and his business partner, Lorimer Milton. But he had the entrepreneur bug when he came here, you see. He was the son of an entrepreneur who started a florist in Tuskegee. He was also very well known, Yates Florist in Tuskegee. And then the philosophy of Booker T. Washington, which was very much a part of his life. But he came here and he was hired by, believe it or not, the bank, Citizens Trust Bank, as a teller.
I've always heard about Auburn Avenue. My father worked at Citizens Trust when he came out of college as a bank teller. He also worked for Alexander and Calloway, who had a realty company right here on Auburn Avenue. I came to church, though we lived on the west side, we came over here to go to church. You came over here for any active life. So I'm just a little boy walking around, but I knew Clayton Yates, I knew Mr. Milton. I mean, they were people I heard about.
And that's where he met Lorimer Milton, who was also a teller. Milton had come to Atlanta at the request of John Hope, who had asked him to come and be a teacher over at Atlanta University in Morehouse. And they met and decided that they would purchase the drugstore when it became available from Heman Perry. I don't know whether that name means anything to you, but he was a well-to-do, some would say quite a millionaire several times over, that lived in Atlanta, came here from Texas. And he made his money by opening an insurance company, and then he financed all kinds of businesses out of the insurance company. So he had a printing press and a pharmacy and all kinds of various businesses. The printing company became Atlanta Daily World.
The news and everybody was down in the front of the building. The press was in the back. And it was just a lot of activity, vitality, a lot of people doing things, being busy, going on the street. I also remember going down to Yates and Milton to get the ice cream. They had the best ice cream. It was called Best Made. And it was really good. And my favorite, of course, was chocolate. And I remember going down there on Sundays, primarily. We'd go after church.
But my experience on Auburn Avenue was just absolutely wonderful. As a youngster, I didn't recognize the value of the exposure that I had at that time, because I came to work at Atlanta Life. I had not finished school. I jumped up and got married. My mother was angry with me about that. And I was looking for a job, and I just wanted a job, so I started working at Atlanta Life. And after I got there, a sense of pride developed about the company. And then the exposure, I would go down to this drugstore, Yates and Milton drugstore, and it was impressive seeing the kind of people on Auburn Avenue. They were educators, they were business people, they were dignified. I would see the young ladies with their briefcases and coming to work and working in the various offices. And we had a dress code at Atlanta Life. You had to dress. Young men were wearing suits and ties and being very impressive. If you looked at them, you would say, he's somebody. And you saw that all over. And then at 6 o'clock in the evening, you might see James Brown, Aretha Franklin, Gladys Knight. The peacock was blooming, the Henry Grill was going, and the Zanzibar, the Ponciata. I know after 6 I was rushed home, but I wanted to stay because the entertainment was just absolutely fabulous.
Auburn Avenue was good for me. It was good to me. It taught me about people. It definitely taught me about hard work, because I had 2 jobs when I was 13. I would sing in the Royal Peacock, and I would come down the steps, turn left, go a door down, 2 doors down, and I would go into Moss's Chicken Shack, and I would sell chicken. So when the Amvets Club and the Royal Peacock turned out, all the people that I was entertaining would come out and come into Moss's and buy the chicken. And he had a great setup, because he was better than Kentucky Fried. Okay?
But Auburn Avenue was hot, and I wanted to go, guess where? To the Royal Peacock. I wanted to see what was in there. What were the people doing in there? And so I talked Maynard into taking me to the Royal Peacock one night. I wanted to see Martha Reeves and the Vandellas, because they were playing there, I believe. And so I just fell in love with the avenue, more importantly, the people on the avenue.
It was just a wonderful, wonderful place that I always say it was a wonderful time to be alive, because the things that I witnessed, the people that I had a chance to see, You go to B.B. Beeman's, you run into Dr. King. I remember I went in Beeman's one day to have lunch, and that was Vernon Jordan, Solomon Walker, and Dr. King. And I had not really met him that well, but I ended up sitting there having lunch with them, and Dr. King walked me all the way back to my office, and I was so excited I couldn't stand myself. But the exposure from Auburn Avenue was just absolutely great.
Auburn was not just sweet Auburn Avenue, in the words of John Wesley Dobbs, Maynard Jackson's grandfather, but it was a street of activism. It was not just around economics, people making a lot of money, that was one thing, but it was also a street of activism and a street where you learn how to be a civil rights worker.
Well, we've been talking about the revitalization of Auburn for I can't tell you how many years, and I guess I'm still holding on. I have calluses. I'm still holding on, waiting on that revitalization.
I would love to see Auburn keep its historical identity. I would love to see it become more of a tourist attraction where people came. Right now people travel from all over the world. We've met people yesterday, just yesterday there were people from the Netherlands that came into the store, and they had just come out to King Center, and they were just like emotional and just it was a life experience for them. And they came into the store and they bought hot dogs and beef sausage and ice cream and sat outside under the umbrella and had an experience.
I really wish that we had more tours led by people who know something about Auburn Avenue, most importantly. Not that you can't learn, but a tour up and down Auburn Avenue with somebody like Henrietta Antonine, who knows it from one end to the next, would be something that kids ought to pay $500 to do and to see. And a stop by Apex Museum, by the way, on that tour. Every tour that people take up and down Auburn Avenue should have a stop here. But I'm wondering if those who conduct the tours understand that.
I'd love to see it continue to be a vibrant, vital place for people to live and work and play. And I think it has that potential. And I think now that they have made it a place where students are safe as opposed to where it was before when there wasn't anybody down here but night street life people. I think it has a good chance of doing that, of being a great place to stay, and with places like the Apex Museum that maintain that history, so people will know the history that was here and what gave birth to what's now.
I am pleased with the work that we are doing so far at the park. I think when we started it was a historic site, and since I've been here we are now a historical park, which means that we have grown. And the park enabling legislation makes it clear that we are to tell the story of where Dr. King was born, which we do there at the birth home, where he lived, which we talked about the community in which he lived in there at the birth home, as well as here on Sweet Auburn, where he worked. So we've fortunately been able to acquire, place the Masonic Lodge, which housed the first SCLC headquarters, in which Dr. King was the first president of here on Auburn Avenue. So we have where he worked, obviously where he worshiped. We now have Heritage Sanctuary of Ebenezer Baptist Church that is within the park, and obviously where he's buried, which is the King Center, where he's buried alongside his wife. So I think we're the only national park, as a matter of fact, I know we are the only national park that talks about a man's life from cradle to grave.
I would like to see more of that support from the King Center. I would like to see more people come down. That's why I would just love to see them make Auburn Avenue a tourist attraction, the whole street. It'd be nice to see people walking from all over the country here, walking up and down Auburn Avenue, not just stuck in that one block of the King Center, but come all the way down, to come up to the Apex. You know, walk all the way down Auburn and experiencing Auburn Avenue as a whole.
The Park Service should continue to put forth those efforts to tell those stories, but in addition to embrace the community at large and allow the community stories to come in and connect with the stories that we tell, so that when the visitor come to Auburn Avenue and really get to experience what the Park Service has to offer, that they leave not only experiencing the Park Service, but experiencing the community at large.
I would love to see something that not only captures the story like you do, the stories like you're doing here, but also helps students connect to the stories. You see, they don't see the stories as their own. They don't have that experience to connect to. And so I don't know why we would think that they would reach over and grab something that's not germane in their eyes. But I think that there are lessons and there are things that you can pull up and share that connect to their lives. You know, imagining what it must have been like to be an entrepreneur in 1920. Rethinking the impact of the race riots. I'll tell you, it fascinates me that Auburn Avenue really didn't take off until after the race riots.
Auburn Avenue, if you're not going to spend a lot of money, then spend the money in the right place where it's going to add to the historical narrative without breaking the bank. And you can do that by not having buildings look abandoned, and you can just do that acoustically. Imagine you coming from, we have clients, tourists that come from Wales, from Germany, and they come on Auburn Avenue, they'll hit the Apex, they'll hit the King Center, they'll hit my spot, but in between, it's the in between that's the problem. Some of the vacant buildings, they don't have to look vacant, they can look artistically vacant.
I think we do have some infrastructure problems that need to be resolved.
The area between Piedmont and Boulevard, I think should be completely retrofitted so that you've got businesses that, you know, I see many of them making great pains to fix the outer structures, and many of them are trying to do the infrastructure stuff. I would like to see them resemble, in some ways, a Parisian restaurant type atmosphere where you could eat outside.
When you're coming up Auburn, it had gospel, blues, it had everything. Then that's what you should hear when you hit Auburn. So those people leave with a feeling. There's nothing you can do more for someone than make them feel good. If they come down Auburn, even if they're not spending any money, even though we want them to, if you hit Auburn and all of a sudden you're hearing some music that just makes you feel good, you know, that changes you.
I would love to see Auburn come back to the vitality it had before. Of course, with changes, because things do change. I would like to see more support from our City Hall.
I wish we could go back and look at what it was, and people with the resources would say, you know what, we're going to recreate it. I know that's wishful thinking. I know people don't like to go back and recreate. They like to move forward. They want to tear down what we have and just go and create something new. I would love to see Auburn become that, not only that black business incubator where people make money. I mean, you got to have money to survive. You know, money is very important in the world. But the other thing about Auburn is, Auburn was so educational in terms of our experiences. And I would love to see us revisit that and try to recreate that.
Auburn Avenue going forward, given the fact that Georgia State University continues to expand, more dormitories, I think that the future will be more students, more young people, more housing, different types of restaurants, shops, coffee shops, cafes. You have the King Center. It will continue to be a tourist attraction, and particularly from the King Center into downtown Atlanta. But it will be a busy, bustling part of Atlanta.
As the late Grand Master of the Prince Hall Masons once said, Maynard Jackson's granddaddy, he said, "Sweet Auburn," that's what he called it. He was actually right. John Wesley Dobbs hit the nail on the head. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't care how much revitalizing they need to do, how much is yet to be done, what they say or don't say about Auburn Avenue. It's still sweet Auburn Avenue to me.